Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to this live stream event on the 22nd December 2020. Martin North is my name. Thank you very much for spending some time just before Christmas with us. A very important show this evening. I have Edwin queued up ready to go, and we're going to take a whole bunch of questions. I had questions submitted beforehand, and there will be plenty of time for questions online as well. Just before we start, my normal caveat: this isn't financial advice. Please understand that this is just general conversation about property and finance and those things. We're not financial advisors, so just please recognise that. Please do play nice in the chat room. No racial slurs. We are moderating the chat actively, and people will be removed if we get into difficulty. This is 22nd December 2020. And use Walk the World to get my attention. There's always stuff going on the chat. Encourage it, no problems. But if you want to make sure that I see it, use Walk the World. Or you can use the super chat, which is enabled, and that means that your question goes right to the top of the queue. Or indeed, you can make a contribution to help us fund the costs of making the shows. So without further ado, let me push a couple of buttons and see whether we can get Edwin in. Edwin, are you there?
I'm here, Martin. I'm still alive.
Glad to see it, and like your hat.
Mac, look, Sanders asked me to say g'day to all the viewers. Now you've been very good followers, and you sent some presents for some of you guys. So let me see what you got. Oh yeah, preparation for the next lockdown, I think. Bit of pasta there, Martin. So
yeah, okay, yeah. Just hold it in the centre of the screen, because otherwise people can't see what you got.
Yeah, and what's this? Hold on. Yeah, my favourite, tuna. There you go. I mean, toilet paper. What more can you ask for, Martin? Toilet paper, tuna, and some spaghetti to get us through the Christmas period. So Merry Christmas to everyone.
Very, very good, Edwin. Dylan was asking this question, which is, how full is Santa's sack? There you go. So now we know.
Yeah, exactly. Look, and as you mentioned earlier on as well, Martin, there is a caveat, obviously. Caveat emptor, viewer beware, or buyer beware in this case. But look, if I offend anybody, if I offend any selling agents out there, there is a caveat. That we do have a caveat, don't we? And if you don't, and if you want to have a go, I'll meet you at the Octagon. How's that?
Right. Okay. Yes. These threats. Yeah. We should say you do a bit of boxing on the side, right?
Oh well, don't say too much. Don't let too much out. I can hold my own, I guess. But sooner than later, Martin. I just sort of wonder whether or not people are going to let me into the selling agents are going to let me into the auctions. I'm going to have to go in disguise to represent our clients.
Well, exactly right. You might get recognised. Now, we should explain to everybody we're on Zoom tonight, and the connection is a whole lot better than Skype last night. So hopefully everything will run well. And you're looking pretty good over the Zoom at the moment. I think everyone's hearing you okay, so that's all good. Okay, now let's get into some meaty discussions, Edwin. And look, I think the first thing I'd like to touch on tonight is a question that I've had from a number of different people, because they keep saying we talk about the difference between units and houses, right? And the part of the question is, is that universally true between units in regions, units in the centre of town, or are there variations there? And in terms of houses and demand for houses, is that universally true too, or is there more granularity?
Look, there's a lot more granularity, as you say, Martin. Look, you've got your boutique style units where you've got there's generally 4 or 6 in a block. Then you've got your 3-story walk-ups, let's say, where there's no lift involved, and then you've got obviously your medium density, which are generally 4 stories and above, and you've got lifts involved, basement car parking, and then you've got your high rise. Just as a brief, then you've got development sites that have got some units on alongside townhouses as well as villas. So yeah, the list goes on. But I think maybe what our follower or your viewers are trying to understand is how is the shift or the mindset, how is it shifting, or how made the prices shift as we move into 2021 and onwards post COVID. I have sort of taking a step further forward, and I think that's where the conversations that I've been having with family, friends, and acquaintances, and associates and the like, and that is trying to identify where people's minds are more at in terms of feeling safe and secure in the future, Martin. I would say that would be one of the most front of mind aspects that people are facing at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the other thing I'd add, Edwin, I think there's a big difference between investors and owner occupiers, right? Because it's clear to me that a lot of the pain is actually amongst investors, particularly in those high rise, off the plan deals that were done a few years ago. Many people bought 2, 3, 4 years ago at the peak, and they're now seeing prices drop significantly. And of course, a lot of those newer high rise have defects as well. So that is, I think, probably the sort of the really adverse end. I think that if you look at owner-occupied purchases in some of the older style, units that perhaps are not high-rise but are low-rise and perhaps are better constructed, I think there's a different story to tell there.
Look, definitely, and we've seen it over and over again with clients, clients of associates, and the real estate industry, and all our followers on Twitter and every other social media platform where we post our findings and our discussions. And there are two very significant truths. One is you've got apartments that were bought for 1.4 million dollars, with water views, that were perhaps 12 months ago were renting for $1,400 a week. Now they'll be lucky to get $750, $800, $850 a week. So there's been a huge drop in the yield. Now, and your second point there was a lot of these apartments that have been built in the last 12, 15 years are riddled with defects that the owners' corporations will never be able to recover from. I dare say that most owners' corporations or building funds are in the red, and one would think that go as far as saying that they're very much insolvent, and with any and hence the reason why we're seeing a lot of strata levies go through the roof. And the values go down. We don't hear a lot of it, obviously, through the mainstream. We don't hear a lot of it at play as readily as what we do, being in the industry and obviously investigating a lot of these apartments for clients, whether they be looking at renting or we're looking at buying or looking at selling and the like. Because the more that information is put out, obviously the more people are aware and the less value that they're going to have, frankly, and that's going to continue to unfold. And I don't think there's a short-term solution. I don't see this problem being resolved, not for the next 5-7 years at least.
Absolutely, it's interesting because Lukey made the point that Sydney rents have dropped in places like Redfern. They were 600, now 400 a week. And I'm seeing that in a lot of the data. SQM published their most recent information today and showed that in both Melbourne and Sydney, rents are continuing to fall. Now, it's not the case necessarily in other places. So, for example, in some of the more regional areas and Gold Coast, very different story. But in those two main markets of Sydney and Melbourne, there's a huge amount of oversupply, and therefore rents are falling. And in fact, some of the most significant falls that I'm seeing, Edwin, are in Melbourne, particularly in around the CBD and in the Docklands area, where there's been huge construction over a long time, and a lot of vacant properties there. A lot of were never actually moved in, and a lot of investors are now not finding anybody to rent at all, and so that overhang is going to continue. And interestingly, the data came out today to reconfirm what we already knew, is that there was net migration negative again Okay, and that looks like being the case next year as well. So we're not going to see significant overseas interest to come in to try and blot up some of that rental stuff,
No, and
particularly in the major centres.
a lot of that. So a lot of that, as you know, is and our viewers know, followers know, it's predominantly students.
Yeah.
That were renting a lot of these apartments. The interesting thing on the flip side there, Martin, or on another side of that particular coin, is the fact that a lot of these apartments, a lot of the owners, or quite a number of owners that myself and my associates are familiar with, they're in the process of taking down walls, because a lot of these 2-bedroom apartments got converted into 4-bedroom apartments, and they haven't been able to sell them because they can't sell them, obviously, as rental accommodation anymore, the way they were configured. I mean, we're talking about lounge rooms get split into two to turn a 2-bedroom into literally a 4-bedroom unit, where they have a common kitchen and a common and they've only got enough room to stand in the kitchen to be able to eat. The amount of people that they were putting in some of these units, and they're going to be suffering. It's going to be very, very painful with regards to a lot of these units around the Redferns, around major hubs, universities, where you see a lot of universities and tertiary education facilities. So you will get some of this in regional areas, of course, where universities have got their satellite campuses. You'll see some movement there, downward shift there as well, because they were also relying on overseas students. But we will see most of it are going to be in the CBDs of Sydney, like you said, Docklands over in Melbourne, and Brisbane as well. So you're going to have a lot of we're going to have a lot of issues with high-rise developments. Medium density upwards is where there's going to be a bit of pain next year.
Yeah, I agree. And this is an interesting one in terms of when do you think rents will crash in Sydney and Melbourne from Anil? Well, they're already crashing. In some areas, I'm seeing rents 15-20% below where they were, and still falling. And they are continuing to fall. So in Sydney and Melbourne, it's clear to me that that's going to be the major sticking point. But then Lukey asked this sort of other side of the equation: is it better to buy a house in the inner suburbs of Sydney now rather than in March, as lending rules are being reduced and stamp duty being removed, leading to price rises? Now, there's a couple of interesting sort of predications in that, in that statement there. But basically, for owner occupation, houses are definitely looking better than units generally, aren't they, Edwin?
Oh, look, definitely. It's going to. There are a number of things that have yet to play out, to unfold. The laxing of the laws, of the regulations, the lending regulations. How easy is it going to be to obtain a loan next year? You've got further proposed changes to the stamp duty, and how that's going to be payable or not payable, or are you going to have an option to pay in dribs and drabs by way of land tax? How that's going to play out? Look, one thing for sure is there is a big appetite for freestanding homes. There is a bigger appetite for not only in terms of wanting to buy, but also in terms of wanting to rent, because as you and I spoke. And I remember, so vividly in late January, early February, when we were speaking about how this was going to play out, how the virus or the lockdowns or our whole approach to dealing with this pandemic, how all that was going to play out. And we said that the sands were really going to be shifted. And we said that people were going to look further into the regional areas, and they have. We've been true on that, on point. We saw that there was going to be we said there was going to be an appetite for freestanding homes, which they have. There's going to be an exodus of high-rise development in particular, and we have seen that, a shift and a moving away from the central hubs, such as your Parramatta's, your Redferns, your cities, your Docklands and so forth, because people are genuinely scared, because they don't know. And right now it's still a situation now with this potential further lockdowns in New South Wales or Sydney, we really don't know what's going to happen. How more to the point, how the government is going to react to all this, how it's going to play out, how are we going to cope, or the economy is going to cope, but more so from an individual's point of view. I think people are genuinely concerned as to how they are going to cope with future lockdowns, because you're cooped up in your dwelling, and if you don't have a backyard or a front yard to go out to and get some fresh air, well, you just got four walls and a tiny balcony. Well, you're not going to get much fresh air, are you?
No, that's a very good point, and it's interesting. The weekly data that's coming in from my survey showed that confidence was definitely checked this last week, particularly as the the problems started bubbling up in and around Sydney, and the borders were closed, having been reopened quite recently. And the other interesting factor, Edwin, is that I've always held the view that the government is very likely to extend, and some say extend and pretend, but extend the support mechanism, so JobKeeper, JobSeeker, etc., for further periods than currently they're advertised to, because they're basically finishing at the end of March. Given what we're seeing at the moment in terms of the latest round of economic impacts on the latest lockdowns, there's probably a pretty good bet now that the government support will be running for longer.
Yeah, and it's interesting how not only I stand with you on that, but also it's interesting how the government's also pushing for individuals or parents or people that are looking to purchase to be able to access the super funds. So the government also is not only kicking the can further down the street or down the hill, but also they want us to use our own money to be encumbered into a life pledge or a death pledge, for life, with in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, properties that we wouldn't really touch with a 10-foot pole, but they create this fear of missing out. They give you a bit of stimulus, on the one hand, but on the other hand, they're also enticing you to use super and any other form of saving to so-called help you along the way as well. So it's. But how long can it go for, Martin? How long can it go for? And quite frankly, look, let's play it this way. Let's say the vaccine works 100% and everything's hunky dory. Are they going to bring in? Are we going to bring in the plane loads? 320,000 or 600,000 in the first year of migrants. Are they going to have money? Are they going to have the cash in their back pocket to go out and put deposits on homes? Who's going to come in? Who are we going to allow in? All these things are yet to play out. In the meantime, or what we are seeing on the ground is that, which again you and I spoke about in January, February last year, early this year, which was the shift, the migration, the internal shift of population from high density to freestanding homes, and that's just obvious, and hence there's been in some pockets of Sydney you've seen some very strong sales figures, others yet to show me any evidence of strength, but there is a bit of demand for freestanding homes.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's worth, I think, reflecting on the fact that not all geographies are behaving the same way, and not all, renting and buying is necessarily similar. But nevertheless, Lukey makes the point that in some markets, renting agents are drip feeding stock and offering, if you offer lower, you might well get it. There's an air of desperation. In fact, I was talking to somebody the other day who has a portfolio of investment properties, and they are just finding it impossible to lease any of them. So they're sitting there with, I think last time they looked, 8 vacant properties without any chance, and they've done the drip feeding and they've done the lower rents, make me an offer sort of thing, and they're just not getting anybody to take it up. So that's why I think that this is quite serious. Now, how far can this whole government stimulus thing go on, and how far can they perhaps kick the, don't throw anybody out of the rental accommodation, etc., which is still, in place in some areas. My own view is, remember, there's going to be an election probably August, October next year. So I wouldn't be surprised to see stimulus running and through until at least then. And then I suppose it depends who gets in and who doesn't. But, this is all going to cost. And, of course, if you're throwing money at the construction sector and throwing money at JobKeeper and JobSeeker, and by the way, a lot of the JobKeeper money is going to the big end of town. So, in fact, if you look at it carefully, a lot of small businesses are unable to access JobKeeper or unwilling to access JobKeeper, so it's gone at the big end of town. So, a lot of this is very patchy in terms of support. So I think it's pretty interesting. Now, having said all that, here's the Adelaide market still roaring along. Well, certainly the sales momentum is a little stronger in Adelaide. Prices, of course, never rushed up so much, so they haven't fallen as much. Although over in Adelaide, rents there are not universally going up. It depends where you look and what types of property you look. So again, I think you have to go granular to really understand what's going on. And I'd say, Edwin, that our sort of first main point tonight is, wherever you look, whether you talk at units or houses, you can't talk in generalities. You can't talk in average house prices or average rent. You've got to look at individual examples and individual properties to really understand what's going on.
Yeah, and you've also got to look at the actual area itself, and how much property really transacts in those pockets, in those areas. We're talking Adelaide, so there's been whether it's 100 families, whether it's 200 families, you drop them in Adelaide, that's going to create a major shift in property, in property values in particular areas of Adelaide, because the real estate there isn't as big as in Sydney or Melbourne. So you're going to see this peaks and troughs along the way. Now, again, you saw a lot of publicity, a lot of chatter across all social media platforms, mainstream media, and the like, with the migration that was happening, or that continued to happen to Queensland, and the migration that's going north, and the migration, the families that are going to Adelaide, predominantly from Melbourne. It's for obvious reasons, because they just went through the hardest lockdowns out. The economy is in total shambles, and a lot of people, quite frankly, if they don't have a mortgage, or if they can move, or they can move their businesses, or they're working from home, or work remotely, whatever, they made that decision to move. So when you've got 100 families or 200 going to Adelaide, mainstream's going to talk in that, because it's a huge shift, because the population isn't that big in comparison to other cities, and then there's a greater shift, obviously, to the Gold Coast and Queensland. So again, it's just our how can I say, our numbers aren't really that big for something to happen to create shifts. Hence the reason why you and I have been talking about predominantly about the freestanding homes in Sydney. We've been keeping a track of the numbers across the Domain platform throughout the year, where we topped out just under 9,000 freestanding homes, and now we're back down to 5,000 freestanding homes for sale on the market. So that's obviously going to create, if people want to transact, if people want to buy, if people still want to, they'll pay that little bit more to move into certain areas to have that security, to have that freedom, because it's not just about school catchment areas anymore. It's also about how freely you can move and how safe you're going to feel. Not from people as much as from catching this virus.
Mm. Well, there's no doubt that that's creating a significant shift. People moving further out. We saw it particularly in and around Melbourne. We're also seeing it now in other places too. And in fact, regional New South Wales is quite hot because people are preferring to move away from the big urban centres. So I think we'll see more of that. Now, here's an interesting one from Cookie, which we might just touch on. Jordan Springs will be bought out by Lend-Lease. How many other suburbs will end up with the same? But it's worth just understanding this. So this is actually quite a large number of relatively newly constructed properties that ended up with sinkholes, and then they basically admitted that the construction quality wasn't up to standard, and so they're basically buying people out.
Yeah, a lot of people forget what Jordan Springs. I mean, I've spoken to Cookie Boy many times about your Jordan Springs, your Schofields, your the ponds, and a lot of these areas that years back there were a lot of these areas that are now built up, were one in 50 flood zones, and then they got re-gazetted. They got I don't know, maybe a couple of Aldi bags were involved. Don't know, Martin, but I'm just saying, just putting it out there. They were either brown paper bags or Aldi bags, and then all of a sudden, LEPs changed and zonings changed and all sorts of things changed when those dreaded reusable bags appear amongst the council worker members. So, but I recall when years back, when I was looking at property, when I started looking at property, these areas were, a lot of these areas were 1 in 50. In some cases, they were even 1 in 25. So you wouldn't. Hence the reason why you look at the old homes that are still in the areas that are yet in the pockets that are yet to be subdivided. You look at them and they're built like bloody Queenslanders, except twice as high. They're built on stilts for that reason, because it floods.
Yeah, in fact, there was quite an interesting article, I don't know whether you saw it today, talking about Brisbane, some of the higher quality, quote unquote, more expensive properties down the main river there, and people have sort of had a very short memory with regard to the floodplains in and around Brisbane.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Martin, is there a lot of these homes that Cookie Boy refers to they've got this wafer pods or that are used to reduce the amount of cement or concrete that you use to build these homes on, and as I keep on just think of it, throw a bit of foam on water and see if it sinks. It doesn't. So you're on flood areas, you're on flood zones, and these things are going to move like there's no tomorrow. These concrete slabs are moving. Some are sinking, but a lot of it's due because not only do they have this polypropylene has major issues with fire. As we've discussed also with how many thousands of homes have been built and have been lined, roof, walls and floors with this crap. Not only that, but the concrete slabs, most of it is these wafer pods to reduce the use of concrete. So before when we talked about a slab, it was a real slab. It was something you didn't want to fall down and you literally break your head. Now you fall down on these so-called slabs and you break the bloody slab and you walk away okay.
Well, I can tell you a little story here. There was some construction going on just down the road, and they had a massive delivery of these big polystyrene foam foundational blocks that you're talking about, right? And they stacked them all up, and we had a rather windy day, right? I mean, they just literally took off, right? There's no weight in them at all, so it's really just volume, right? And I was thinking, well, hang on a moment, you're going to put these in the ground, and then you're going to build a house on top of it. I mean, that sounds really sensible.
Yeah, I saw a house. I was asked to. At the time, I was still very much into selling property, and I was asked to look at a particular house. And you had a crack right from one corner to the other. It went right through the whole bloody house. And I said, look, unless you get that fixed and you get an engineer certificate, I'm not interested in selling it. And all they did was just filled it up and laid some floating timber flooring on top, and some other agent sold it. I just didn't want any bar of it. But you're going to see more of that. Hence the reason why you've got driveways. But wait until the whole all these cracks and our weather is ominous. It's just one of those things. We could have 3 years of constant rain. We could have 7 years of drought. We could have all sorts of things. But you've got to only look at the landscape, and you've got to look at historical mappings, not only in the outskirts of Sydney, but you also look at where a lot of these high densely built up areas closer to the city, your Waterloos, your Mascots and all that, and see how over time they've rediverted natural water easements and old stormwater easements. They rediverted to build these monstrosities that are sitting on that are badly built, badly engineered. On paper it all looks great, but badly built, and then on water tables as well. So I mean, you're always going to have issues when you start building in these wet areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's go on to another topic, and this is one that Aaron floated a little while ago. Aaron, thank you very much for your contribution there. This is to do with land tax versus stamp duty. And the question basically was, when a property is converted to land tax rather than stamp duty, is that likely to carry a stigma? Because basically, rather than paying up front for the purchase, you're committed to paying each year, right? And at the moment, there's talk about in New South Wales bringing this in, but on a voluntary basis, so you can choose which might be better. Of course, they also don't tell you how much land tax could go up later. That's the other point, where at least with stamp duty, you know precisely what you've paid because you paid it up front on day one. So what's your perspective here, Edwin, in terms of, is this a real significant issue, and is it really going to make any difference to the market? And do you think we're going to end up with, some that are less popular because it's got land tax versus stamp duty?
I'll tell you one of the things that is front of mind at the moment, and from my from the different investment groups, online investment groups that we monitor across as I call them, the WeChat chatterers, but nevertheless, these are a lot of people are cashed up, and they're already putting in plans to actually buy and flip. In order to avoid a lot of these extra duties that we would otherwise pay if we buy a property now under the current regs. So they're already looking at ways to look at looking at loopholes, and these aren't silly people. They're smart people, and they're looking at the loopholes to make it more convenient to literally buy and flip. And at the moment, most of them are talking about the benefits of actually that they will have in terms of buying and flipping, but predominantly as owner occupiers as opposed to investors. So the government puts out all these crazy notions out there, tries to make it a lot easier to get in, but all they are doing is just making it harder for the poor bastards that have never bought a property before, that are looking at buying the first home as opposed to an investment. But the government doesn't really care much about them, nor do they care much about the retirees. So that's what we're seeing on the ground. So how it's all going to play out, how they is one going to be better than the other? Is it going to have a stigma or not? Obviously the final rulings are yet to be determined, but they're already looking at ways to make this work in their favour, to buy and flip and upgrade to better homes as owner occupiers.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Zach makes the point, if land tax does come in, will it be retrospective or not? I don't think it is at the moment. They're basically saying that it's going to be for new settlements after a set date, and then you can choose. You can either pay your stamp duty up front or you can pay land tax. What I would observe is that New South Wales just reported the latest land tax receipts, and they were way up again, right? So they dropped dramatically, and now they're coming up. Not as high as they were previously in 2017, but they're higher. But what they have not done in New South Wales is to explain essentially how they're going to fill the gap, right? Because if you think about it, if you are today receiving this amount from stamp duty settlements, right, and next year half of them are going to be land tax, which means it's going to be a smaller amount over a longer period of time, you've got this gap for at least the first 2 or 3 years. How are they going to fill the gap?
Well, I think that I almost see that as almost like a let's say a statement that then they could go and borrow money on as revenue or income that you could borrow on. But again, we'll be paying it. Obviously, the taxpayer is going to be paying it over a long period of time. So for that short period, I would say that they'll use that as revenue, potential revenue, that they'll go and borrow the balance that shortfall that you're talking about, Martin. The question that's one of the many questions that needs to be explored is, we're talking about land tax. Are we talking land tax on land?
Yeah.
Or are we talking property tax? Because that's two different beasts. Because if it's literal land tax, then it'll be on the value of the land. And how do you then tax people that have bought apartments? Because the portion of land is minimal, because really they really bought space. So a space and a view, the higher you go, I guess. So that's yet to be done. I get it's going to the terminology. Watch this space, but it's going to change to property tax.
Yeah.
At the moment, they're not using the term land tax because it doesn't suit them to use the term property tax. Because once you start changing the word from land tax to property tax, all sorts of alarm bells start to go off.
Absolutely.
But watch this space. Maybe the mainstream will pick up our chatter tonight, and we'll see an article over the weekend over it, Martin.
Well, by definition, it has to be property tax rather than land tax, because more and more properties are being built in high-rise. And basically that means if they don't tax each property in high-rise, they're not going to make sufficient relative to the stamp duty that they currently make. So that's why I keep saying, it might be an interesting theoretical change, but the practicality of it really just shows how complex this is. And, people will do the trade-off, I guess, in terms of saying, well, if I'm going to live in a place for a couple of years, I'm probably better to pay land tax. If I'm going to live it as, buy it as a long-term hold, then I might pay stamp duty. So you're going to see all sorts of weird conversations going on around it.
Yeah, and you're going to have all sorts of fights and stabbings, and because nobody's going to come to the government's always. It's going to be smoke and mirrors most of the time. But I think our WeChat chatter friends have are onto something with regards to flipping and upgrading to better properties as owner occupiers. They're onto something. So we'll see. We'll just wait and see.
Now here's one from Dylan. Be interested in your perspective on this. I reckon a lot of people will be looking for sane parts of the Anglosphere, Australia and New Zealand, compared to the shows. What shows in the US and the UK have become. In other words, is Australia and New Zealand on an international basis becoming more and more attractive? And I'd be interested in your WeChat perspective here, because of course you're well plugged into China.
Look, it's becoming very attractive. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of conversation around the WeChat chatter is spread out throughout the world, as we've said a couple of months ago. The pathway for PR or permanent residency is very easy and very quick for highly skilled professionals, particularly in the medical industry and in the IT. So we're becoming very, very attractive. So once international borders are open, it's watch this space because, as you know, WeChat chatters are all over the world, Martin, and there's a lot of them in the US as well. So for political reasons, for health reasons, the US has become a basket case in a lot of states, and quite frankly, we've become very, very attractive. Look at all the movie stars that are relocating to Australia, Martin. So if you're going to get half of Hollywood in Australia, the rest of the world's going to follow. Then we'll have Bollywood. Hong Kong would. I don't think that's coming anytime soon because those poor bastards are down for another long haul with the third and the fourth wave.
No, absolutely. Now, Cookie Boy makes another interesting comment here, which is just worth exploring, and that is that the 1 in 3 investor loans in deep freeze, this is actually an article that came out today, with falling rents and property keeper ending in April, how long can banks hide mortgagee sales and delay the inevitable? And we know that some banks have been quietly purchasing some properties that were actually looking as though they were going to default to stop them falling into default already.
Well, Winded Penguin on Twitter has brought out the question: are a number of these investors going to have a jubilee? Are the banks going to forgive a lot of these loans? And I think he's pretty much on track. He's been saying this for a couple of months now. It's no different to what the government was doing and continues to do, I believe, in Canada. And that is the banks are holding the total devastation of the high-rise development there, and we were only going to follow suit. This is even before COVID. They were already having issues. Let's not forget the oversupply. I think the oversupply is what's really going to make us come undone a lot quicker than what the banks will have to put these stoppers in place, because there's a lot that have been built, a lot that are vacant, as you and I know, Martin. It's probably close to 1.4 million dwellings, and a lot of them are high-rise developments and investment properties. A lot more haven't come on the market because of these the mortgage holidays that many are still making use of. So our population isn't that big, really. I think there's enough supply there to last us another 5-7 years without building any more, if we really looked at all the empty dwellings. So, look, what banks do, how they stop. It's like you said, Martin, in yesterday's show. It's just watching like the coyote as he follows the road runner and goes over the cliff, and it's just, keeps on. His legs just keep on going around and around and around and around. Until he looks down and realizes that he's gone off the cliff. And I think that's where the banks are at the moment as well. But how long is anybody's guess? How much money the government will print is anybody's guess.
Yeah, well, they'll probably print quite a lot more, and I'm afraid that cartoon just keeps haunting me these days. Over the cliff. Oh, look down! Don't look down. If you look down, it'll don't stop running. It's pretty.
Well, that's a trick. Don't look down, Martin. Don't look down.
Keep looking up. Yeah,
that's it.
And just keep reading all the spruiking, and that'll keep you in the air, right?
Keep reading the AFR.
Now here's one which is quite interesting. With the US eviction crisis and the commercial mortgage debacle unfolding, surely this could affect the Australian economy and housing market. How precisely, of course, is the big question. I mean, in the US, they've just announced the new package, so that's positive in a way. It probably was required. It's going to include some funds for businesses, some funds for people who are going to lose support, and so on. But it's still a relatively smaller amount than was originally expected. I think, my own view is the US economy is going to definitely have difficulty for some time. Now, how that plays out and whether it creates a weaker dollar or a stronger dollar is all a really interesting question. But we do know that there are some people looking at Australia thinking, compared to the US, Australia is very attractive.
Yeah, it's not just for economic reasons, as I said, Martin. It's also for political and also for crime in a lot of the states of the US is going through the roof. safety reasons. People just don't feel safe in lots of parts. I mean, I've got family staggered from Florida to Chicago, some in New York and Atlanta, and also in LA, California, parts of LA, California, and also in Utah. So it's safety, the political spectrum. It's all changed. And as I said, if you're in the health industry, if you're a medical practitioner, the pathway for PR, permanent residency in Australia, is very easy and very quick. So I can see that, and then there's obviously the people with a lot of wealth that can go anywhere in the world, and we are very, very attractive. And we're not in retrospect, when you look at it, our population is only 25 million.
Yep. Relatively small. Now, I just want to answer this question from Gorana. Where is your Santa hat, Martin? It's on the A of DFA. It's there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you wouldn't believe the trouble I had to be able to get the Santa hat to look right on the A. I spent way too long this afternoon trying to sort it out. So. Crazy. And this is from Jason. Thank you very much for your contribution, Jason. Evening all, hi Martin, wishing everyone safe and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Keep up the good work. We will. There's just so much to talk about, so much we need to talk about, and we are committed to trying to cast a bit of light into, frankly, quite a dark subject, but very important subject.
Which is dark subject being property. But I've been thinking about what to bring to our audience next year, Martin, and I'm going to start. I'm really going to start going hard on the industry and the shenanigans that the industry get up to, and start exposing it. Not to be critical of the industry as much as to bring light and bring clarity, so that our viewers and our followers can be better equipped when they go out and look for property, for both rentals as well as to sell and also to buy, particularly when they buy. So I've been talking to a few people about bringing out different ways and means of trying to bring clarity to that subject that haunts us all, and that is the price withheld crap that we've seen. So we're trying to see how we can bring greater light to that area, also to regulations, what agents can tell you or can't tell you that you can do in a rental property, which I think is very, very poignant, given the fact that where we are, what we've just gone through. What your rights are and so forth. So that's where my thinking is, Martin, and obviously the how to buy and how to screw the selling agent before he or she screw you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talking of calling it out, why don't we go through the three slides that you sent us earlier on, Edwin, because this is a classic real life example. Let me put the first one up, and then you can talk to it.
Well, this was sent by one of our followers, Martin, and it's a sale. Now I've got to premise our discussion with allegedly, haven't I? In order to be safe, is that right?
Yep.
And if the agent in the slide wants to have a go, we'll meet him at the Octagon. Blacktown's the closest place we can meet at. So this particular property, 321 and 323 Abercrombie Street in Darlington, was advertised by auction. So one of our followers sent that through. Actually, she called me this afternoon, managed to get a hold of me through the website, and she was rather perplexed about the whole the whole scenario, the whole marketing campaign. She was keen on this property, obviously, to build two new dwellings across the two lots. Collectively, it's about 254 square meters from memory, or 64 square meters. So generally in that area, the lots are on average about 130 square meters. But established homes in the area that have been partly renovated, not rebuilt, but renovated, they would sell anywhere between 1.55 and 1.65. So say 1.6 across the board. So a dwelling that's an existing dwelling that's been there for about 100, or 80 or 100 years or so. Now these two lots were being marketed under an auction campaign for 1.7 million. Now, when you break it all down and then you work it backwards, that represents a value of per lot of $850,000. Now, you've only got to do the math, and you can work out that if an established dwelling in that area is selling for 1.6 million. That's an established area, that's been up for 80 to 100 years, and it's been renovated. So you still got you may still have issues to deal with in the future. So it's an established dwelling. If they're selling for 1.6 as one lot, as one dwelling on 130 or 135 square meters of land. Well, where the hell does this agent get his guide to of 1.7 across two lots? It doesn't make sense, Martin. The maths just don't add up. Now, our follower said that she was prepared to pay just over 2 million for the lots, which is okay, which is reasonable. But realistically, the guide of 1.7 was just bollocks. Eventually, the both lots got sold for 2,650,000. If you want to bring up the next slide, Martin, there's your RP data report, sold on the 19th for 2,650,000. And the mainstream media and the local agents, in this case it wasn't a local agent, but the agents, they're all beating their chest how it achieved something like 950,000 above reserve. Well, that's bollocks. That's BS, because it should have never been guided at 1.7. 2.3 would have been a reasonable guide. Based when you do the numbers to rebuild and that's if you're going to be only rebuilding two-story homes, because you could go a lot higher. You could do a lot more with those lots when you look at the LEP, the building regs in that area. So that's the underquoting, and they're the shenanigans that we want to expose more and more next year.
Yeah, right. And let's just put the third one up. So this actually really just sums it up quite well, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's the guide during the marketing campaign. The established dwellings in the area. Again, when I say established, obviously you're going to get it. You're going to get it with with all the it could be a prickly pear. You don't know how well the renovations have been done. So you're going to it's an 80 year old dwelling, 80, 100 years old. They sell for 1.6 renovated. It's just insane what goes on. And Fair Trade in New South Wales needs to pull their finger out and get about and start monitoring these auction campaigns a lot more readily.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I think as we go into next year, we'll continue to tell these stories, and I guess we want to tell them at two levels, right? One, to illustrate the sorts of things that are going on, because we're taking some specific examples, but you can extrapolate from the specific to the general and understand some of the broader dynamics. The other point is, it's very important to understand how unequal the whole thing of buying and selling is, right? Between the way that the agents operate and the way that the various elements around the agents operate vis-a-vis the purchasers or the prospective purchasers. And one of the biggest questions that I keep getting a lot of the time is, how do I know what fair value is on a property? Where can I go? how do I actually know what is the right amount to buy or to sell at? And that's not a straightforward question, is it, Edwin?
No, it's not. Look, it all comes down to obviously experience, understanding land values, understanding construction values, understanding replacement costs. It's look, in a lot. Hence the reason why a lot of valuers valuers go and do it's a university degree to be able to value a home. Now some you sort of wonder whether they found a university degree in a cornflakes packet or a Cocoa Pops packet, but look, most of them are really good, and there is science to it, and you do have to take into account, emotion plays a value in the price of a home as well. Local economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics, what's happening internationally plays a part in what's happening with property. So we can't just look at it as a one-sided event or take it as a one-sided or one-pronged approach anymore. It can be very complicated. But that's why you're providing that service, Martin, to be able to look at properties, areas, suburbs, and drill down into specifics. And I think it's a great service that you're providing, and that people that are looking at buying should take you up more and more on, Martin, because it enables. You've got all the data, you've got all the data sets, you've got all the. You look at the global economics, you look at local economics, and it's something that people need to utilize a lot more. And let's face it, to sell a home, people use professional selling agents. Whether you think that the crap, the good or bad or ugly or otherwise, that's not the point. The point is that they use whether it be whether they bend the rules, break the rules, smoke and mirrors. They use strategies and tactics to lure you in and to make you pay more than what the property is worth, or what they believe it's worth, what they believe it's really worth, all that. And that's a strategy that they use. So sellers use professionals to sell their properties, staging agents, photographers, videographers, and selling agents. So people are going to have to start learning to use more services particularly like yours, Martin, because I love that whole aspect of being, drilling down into specific areas to see what's really happening, so people can be well informed. And as I always say, then there's also the call as many agents as you can, as many selling agents as you can, to gather information. And there's a lot of free information on the internet as well.
Yeah, well, let me just do a quick plug for what you're talking about, which is the service that I run. It's called the DFA One-to-One service. And, I've had a few people ask about how do I get specific information. Well, this is one thing that I offer. So I can provide an individual suburb analysis, right? So it's a suburb within a postcode. I can't give financial advice, but I can pull the information together to be able to look at things like stress, home price trends, the views, the scenarios, what may happen ahead. And I've done nearly 300 of those now over the last few months, all over the country. Some of them I then subsequently put up on the channel to sort of give people a general idea. But this is a one-on-one conversation, about an hour of conversation, and it's very granular, very detailed, and it gives you a sensitivity that you don't get from any other source in terms of what's really going on. The problem I've got with some of the other data sources is that they are very much myopically aligned to what the agents want to tell you, rather than actually what reality is. So the DFA One-to-One service is there. If you want to use it, just send me a note via the DFA blog. We can book a time. It takes about 2 or 3 weeks to do the work, and there is a cost to it, simply because it takes time and effort and energy to do it. But I do think it has helped a lot of people get clarity on what's really going on. So that's the DFA One-to-One service. And Edwin, thanks for underscoring it.
Oh, look, it's something that needs to be utilised more. Look, this is what I'm going to do, Martin, to to keep on plugging your service there, which I think it's invaluable. What I'll do is, why don't we hold late January, hold a special podcast or live chat, subscribers only, or people that have taken up your service. I'm willing to sit for anywhere between half an hour to an hour, however long it takes, and I'll take people through on a private viewing of how to bid at auction, and give them some of the tips and hints and strategies that I use. But the way to subscribe to it is if they take up one of your services, Martin. How's that?
That sounds great. Well, I think let's work something out. I mean, because that is a really critical issue, right, in terms of how to engage and how to actually, get the market to work for you rather than against you.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I always say to my associates, you either walk away with a house for your client, or you can walk away with a bottle of wine, because a lot of selling agents give out wines for the first person that bids. So you never lose at auction. I never lose anyway.
Master Singleton makes the point that he did a Bachelor of Business and Commerce, so he didn't get shafted by the property agent. So it's all pretty good. Now, there was a couple of other interesting questions that came in beforehand. One I wanted just to touch on briefly was this issue of over-quoting, under-quoting, right? And we've covered it a few times, but the particular message came in from John and Julie, which said, it's crazy. I saw a North Shore property sell 790,000 over reserve in the pre-Christmas rush. And the question is that fear of missing out, or is that under-quoting, or is it both? What's going on? What's the real story with regard to under-quoting? And I think it's really worth just going through that again, Edwin, because this under-quoting thing is a big deal, isn't it?
Look, it is. And I think the regulators have really dropped the ball on this one again. Just because you put out so-called new regulations, which have been etched in the Property Stock and Business Agents Act for since 2002, they think that all of a sudden, by bringing new so-called regulations, that it's going to curb the practice. It hasn't. Not and it won't. Not when you've got representatives of some of the agency bodies that won't take harsh actions with their members that underquote, because most of the agencies are represented on the boards anyway. So the way you can see general trends by the agents themselves, the individual agents. Certain companies have got a stigma about the way that they promote properties through auction, predominantly through auction campaigns, and they underquote. And let's face it, I think 20 or so years ago, people were taught to underquote, how to put together marketing campaigns through major real estate offices and agencies. They were literally taught. It's part of the manual, the agent's manuals when you join that agency. I'm talking about 20, maybe a little bit more, maybe 22 years ago. So it was all, and that's where you got all these things of price it low and watch it go, was the old saying back then, and that was the mantra that was always surrounded auction campaigns. It's very much alive and well, and as I said, the regulators have dropped the ball. So with regards to these campaigns where you see huge prices over the so-called reserve or the guide, you've really got to question the agent's position, because then I always say, and it really takes them aback on this, and that is, I say, look, you're quoting 1.2. The last sale in this street, a similar house, was at 1.5. You either don't know the value of the properties on the area, or you're underquoting. It can only be one of the two, correct? And then they're taken aback because that's it. It can only be one of the two, Martin. Ignorance, ignorance, or sheer blatant travesty and breaking of the regulations. It can only be one of the two. What else can it be? They're either very ignorant as to property values or not. So you can do your historical checks, even on domain and real estate. You can do historical checks of sales in the area of similar properties. They give you quite a lot of properties that have been recently sold in the area that you can compare with. But you get a pattern, Martin. You get a pattern of the particular agents in the particular areas, the particular agencies that use this as a tactic, which is frowned upon by the regulators. But unfortunately, the regulators aren't out there like they used to be policing it.
Yeah. No, well, the regulation processes, and there's a lot of people in the industry calling for more and more, quote, self-regulation, unquote, just like the banks have been allowed to do for many years, and that went so well, didn't it?
And look at the construction industry.
No, exactly right. So there has to be some sort of processes to, excuse me, to protect to the appropriate degree. And I think the other point is, it fascinates me that every time a property goes way over the reserve, there are massive articles written about it and everybody says, hey, it's booming market, right? How many times have you seen an article published where they sold below the, right?
Yeah, and I can't remember the address of that property that got sold not too long ago, about 6 weeks ago, for something like what was it, $9 million above reserve. Did you recall that one, Martin?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay, so I did a bit of background research on that property. The agent was quoting the purchase price in 2013. That was his guide.
Right.
Now, the real story of that article should have been underquoting at its best.
Yes.
That's a real story. Or does this idiot know the value of the properties? That should have been the headline. Does the idiot selling the house know the value of the properties, or underquoting at its best? Because again, either they know the value of properties in their patch, or they're blatantly underquoting. It can only be one of the two. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what you want to say. Come on our live show, and I'll debate this till the cows come home, and I'll show you. And after I smack you in the teeth, that is, we'll go. I'll show you the shenanigans that goes on out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the point, right? So again, we have a myopic set of reporting going on where anything sort of over this artificial reserve is spruiked to high heaven. Almost no evidence, no information shared when prices go below, or when property doesn't sell. So you have a myopic story of what's going on in property land, and of course that's then picked up and then re-reported in the mainstream media and on television, and the auction clearance rates, etc., all thrown in. And by the way, just on that, this is SQM's latest, which came out for the 20th of December, and it's just worth highlighting again. Sydney clearance rate 60%, Melbourne 55%, Canberra 81%, but not a lot elsewhere. Those percentages are again a lot lower than the quote official, unquote official rates, as were cited in all the newspapers and on all the mainstream portals. So the SQM data, I think, is much more robust, as we showed the other day, Edwin.
Yeah, and the other thing there, Martin, is as we discussed with Louis, and that is the reason why you even see a lot. His figures are a lot higher in terms of actual sales, because I don't look at the percentages. I look at the actual transacted figures, the actual numbers that got sold on the day. But the Sydney region that Louis captures is the which one does he use? He uses the ABS, I think it is.
Yes, that's right.
And so which gives you a broader, covers a broader region than what Domain does. And yet he comes up with these lower percentages. So you got to ask the question, why do the portals hold back on a lot of information that they do have? I know they have. I've had my sources internally, and I've seen the stuff that they put out in comparison to what they really have. It's has been in the past chalk and cheese. But look, it's just one of those things, and we've just got to. The more information that we put out, the more they follow us on our different platforms, Martin, the more educated our followers will be.
That's what it's all about, Edwin. This is about helping people to understand more about what's going on so they can make better decisions. And on better decisions, I showed this earlier, but I just didn't have a chance to discuss it. Dylan said, it's a straightforward question. You look at what you can afford, what you're paying in rent, what properties are in the area going for, and how confident you are in your earnings. There's some really interesting truths in that. The earnings one and how secure your future earnings is probably the most critical thing to think about in the current environment, with unemployment a lot higher, with the virus still raging and those other things going on. And it amazes me how quite often people will go in and buy property and commit to a mortgage without really considering that really critical question.
Yeah, and also, and I can add to Dylan's points there. We can also add, look at buying something that there's an upside. What can you do to it relatively quickly by way, when I say a cosmetic uplift that you can do to the property to secure your position should there be another economic grenade thrown in that in that area or at our economy, and the floor shifts downwards, so you can protect yourself. Always look at something. I don't. And if you do buy somebody else's renovation, if you really do buy, I say look at buying the pain, not look at buying the emotion, but rather than pain. And unfortunately, if you when I look at buying somebody else's renovation, I want to know what the background is, and if it's a typical separation or financial issues or that's when you want to buy somebody else's renovation. Yeah, that's what I mean by buying their pain, which is unfortunate. Somebody else's loss becomes your gain, and that's just how the world moves in certain areas, in certain fields. So you've got that's but I always look at property with an upside, and that upside could be subdivide it, add another dwelling, shift a few walls, create an extra room, whatever. Just look at it for an upside.
Yeah, absolutely. And you often make the point, you actually do more when you buy rather than when you come to sell, right?
That's right. You got to look at it's buy and right. It's critical. It's key to protect yourself and protect our clients with any future issues, as we say, any other grenades that are thrown at our economy. We want to make sure that you can mitigate your loss. And let's face it, it could be your own health issues, could be a relocation. You might have to sell just as quickly as what you bought because you've been relocated, or you've decided to jump over to New Zealand for whatever ungodly reason, but let's say you did. It's just one of those things, mate. You had to move to Queensland or to WA because you're going to get $50,000 to buy a new home. I don't know.
Well, here's one from Dylan, which I'll just throw up now. Interested in thoughts on why people spend so much in Sydney and Melbourne when you can buy stunning properties in Brisbane for less than $1 million. Are those cities really that much better?
Look, a lot of it's work.
Yep.
just work, and where we've grown up. If I didn't have to work, I too may do a shift up to Queensland. But the thing is, it's just where you grew up, but mostly it's work, because the over the decades, I've seen the rise and falls of properties, and I've seen what happens in Queensland, and how you've got two transient groups of people. One is the renters. They move from new subdivision to new subdivision to rent a better property, and so there's a lot of oversupply in terms of new dwellings that are built there, as housing land packages, and they go Red Bank and further northwest and whatnot. I've seen that transient populations, and also the transient workforce. It's very much up and very much down. I'd be interested to see how many people are going to be coming down to New South Wales for work once these whole lockdown things start being lifted, because of the simple fact that the hospitality and the tourism industry in Queensland has been devastated, and people need work.
Yeah, well, work is, of course, the critical element. And Dylan, many thanks for your contribution. Really, it is appreciated, and it's a great question. What I would say is that I've certainly surveyed some people quite recently who are definitely considering moving from Melbourne or Sydney to other areas. They look at Perth, they look at Queensland, because of the differential in property prices. So that there's definitely some of that. The question is, how sustainable is that? And given what we're seeing in some of those areas where prices are on the turn, and you look in Perth and look in Queensland, the areas of Queensland, they're on the rise for houses, not units so much. To go back to our earlier conversation, but it's a really interesting dynamic, and I do see some people who are genuinely now saying, not sure that the Sydney-Melbourne axis is where I want to be medium to long term. So we'll see how that plays out. Edwin, we were coming up towards the end of our show. There was a couple of other quick things I just wanted to cover off. We had a long email from Paul Louis, who said, I accidentally bumped into your YouTube videos a while ago. I've been listening to it ever since, because I found your analysis very thorough, and you take into account so many different factors. So thank you very much. I'll be able to answer this question: what will happen in Adelaide? And there's a whole series of questions in Adelaide in terms of job keeper, job seeker, FOMO. Also, analysis by postcode would be great. Well, I've explained how we do the analysis by postcode, because that's effectively the DFA one-to-one. But in terms of Adelaide, I know, Edwin, you don't really cover off Adelaide particularly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that question and I'll make a special show on what's going on in Adelaide, because it's quite an interesting story. What I can say at a summary level is that it is not all one side of the street. There are some prices that are going up in areas in Adelaide, but there are also prices where they're not going up. Mortgage stress is still very high in some areas, and there's also quite a lot of subdivision and new development going on. So the Adelaide market is much, much less clear than, again, many of the mainstream media would actually want us to have believed. So I'll come back and answer that in a separate post. It may be after Christmas. I will be making a few shows over Christmas and the New Year, but won't be really up to full strength until early in the New Year. But I won't forget that particular question. Anything to add on Adelaide, Edwin?
Look, no, I don't know it that well. I've only travelled there twice, I think. But see, that's how long ago it is. I can't even remember whether I was there once or twice. No, I think I was there twice.
Yeah.
Nice part of Australia to visit, but wouldn't want to live there. That's just my personal opinion.
Fair enough. And a few other people said, I'd like to know more about Adelaide. Right, we will do something on Adelaide specifically. In fact, I've got this plan. Whether I'll get to it is another question, where I cover some of those other areas in more detail. I did actually cover Hobart a little while ago. And my plan is to cover some of those other areas too. A few people have accused us of being too Sydney-centric or Sydney-Melbourne-centric. Just reflect on the weight of volume of transactions in those two centres relative to the rest of the country, right? Basically, what happens to the property market in those two centres really spills over into pretty much everywhere else. But we will cover some of the other areas too. Now, let's have a look. There's a few other interesting questions coming through right at the end here. Yes, as somebody said, thanks for Adelaide. Sometimes people forget us because we're small. Small but perfectly formed is how I'd call Adelaide. So that's my view, and it's certainly something that we want to come back to. Now, there's one from Ray here, which we'll just quickly cover. Would house prices fall further away from the CBD compared with Would house prices fall away from the CBD? Would they rise further compared with this close in, simply because of remote work? That remote work question is quite an interesting one, isn't it, Edwin? We've discussed it a few times, and I think your perspective is there is going to be more demand further out and less demand closer in.
Yeah, look, because obviously the land. I think it all comes back to the land. And a lot of people that, again, on the many platforms that we monitor and discussion groups that we're part of, they all talk about, they're even buying little chickens, the dynamics is changing. The land is becoming more and more appealing to a lot of people. So I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the shifts. And the other thing that I've been thinking about, because I guess because I've had a lot more work to do in the inner west and those areas, is a lot of the terraces, a lot of the homes there, they're 100, 120 years old, and there's a lot of work, and they're not easy to fix. They are not easy to fix, particularly if you've got two party walls or you've got two adjoining homes, one on either side, or even if you've got one, because of the age, the nature, the way it's been constructed, the covenants over it, heritage covenants and so forth. It's just very costly. People. I have spoken to a lot of agents in the Sutherland Shire. They've been getting, over the last 2 months, they've been getting a lot of inquiry and a lot of buyers that have transacted, that have moved from the inner west to the Sutherland Shire. And then again, commuting. You don't have to commute as often into the city, and and it's becoming a lot easier because the rail links and the road works are getting better, by the year. So I guess that's where the shift is. But it's a wait and see to what the government are going to do with regards to migration or immigration, and who they're going to allow in, and when they're going to start allowing people back in as students, and to migrate back into the centres that are generally the hubs that are around the educational facilities. Is it going to be mid next year? Is it going to be at the end of next year? How long can the highly densely populated areas or built up areas, how much longer can they survive before we start seeing rapid drops in prices?
And I guess that takes us nicely to the end of the show, Edwin. So what's your read over the next 6 to 12 months, right? What are the things that you're watching, and how do you think it's likely to play out over that time period?
One of the main things that I'm watching, and I'm very close to, obviously, our client base and the inquiry that have reached out to us, to help them and assist them in the property transactions, with the property transactions, and that is what we said earlier on. and that is how much value people are putting on land. How the general populace have woken up to how valuable a square meter of land is. Yeah, in all parts of Sydney. So there's a lot of value in that. Unfortunately, I've also been paying close attention to the fact that over the last 25 years that I've been in the real estate industry, I've seen perhaps more of a deterioration in the dwellings, natural deterioration because of the age, and very little upkeep of the dwellings, because a lot of the dwellings have been rental properties. So a lot of owners have been reluctant to maintain them properly, and then on the other side, on the owner occupied, they are very old homes. Again, that they've been with families for 30, 40, 50 years, and they've had mostly have had very little upkeep. So that's what's taken caught my eye over the last few months, Martin, and I'm going to be keeping a closer watch on those areas next year, because it's been alarming how you and I have discussed in the last month how people are foregoing building and pest reports in order to get into a dwelling because of fear of missing out, not realizing that they're going to be liable for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars post purchase, because they're relying again on the shenanigans of the that's so ingrained in the selling side of the real estate industry. So they're the things. One of the things in the back of my mind, I've been thinking as to on positive outcomes with the vaccine and people becoming more relaxed to congregate in greater groups again, and to look back into the densely populated areas again. And the fact that there's a lot of apartments that are vacant and are well priced, are they going to start moving back in to have those water views or be in the densely populated, and how quickly is that really going to play out? Is it going to be a short-term event, or is it going to be play out over a long term? It comes back to how we manage our fear of future pandemics, I guess.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I just left this one up from Otto here. Prospect of rising in the next 30 years is limited, right? That's one of the points I want to make, right? We've had a very significant run up over the last 30 years for house values and unit values as well. But there were one-off reasons. We came with interest rates very high coming down. We had very much reduced lending standards. We had all of the government stimulus and incentives. Interest rates are now pretty much as low as they can go. There will be some more government stimulus, but they can't go on doing that forever. The lending standards probably won't get much looser. There's going to be some changes next March, but they're pretty loose already. So it's hard to see how we're going to see huge capital growth, anything like we've had over the last 30 years. And I keep showing people in my one-to-one sessions, most of the property growth was 2010, 11, 12 up to 2017, right? So quite a lot of growth, quite strong growth, in some cases 20% per annum, but then effectively down or sideways or down, and then slightly up. I don't see the prospect of significant capital growth over the next few years. Negative migration, probably investors still very much sitting on the sidelines and probably selling rather than buying. There is not the conditions for the same capital appreciation. And without it, Otto is dead right, without massive capital gains, how are you going to pay it off? And for me, that's the critical sort of big question which people need to come back to, in my view.
Yeah, not to the locals, but as I said, keep an eye on the as we are on the medical professionals that are seriously looking at migrating into Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we, as I said, it's not really a big market. So 500 transactions, 1,000 new transactions across 3 months in Sydney, being the biggest city alongside Melbourne. 1,000 transactions. Will have a big effect in certain parts. Of course, again, we go back to that granular aspect, Martin. It's in certain pockets, in those desirable areas, because no wealthy, even if he was even from China or wherever. The question is what part are they looking? If they can come over, if they can bring the wealth over, where do they really want to live?
Absolutely. Well, I know Cookie Boy is begging us to go until 10 o'clock, but I think I'm pretty much, my batteries are running down. It's like those old Duracell batteries with the bunnies, I can feel my sort of...
Yeah, you're well, Cookie Boy's never ready. He's always on the go, isn't he?
Evidently, yeah. So I think we're pretty much done there. But look, I really appreciate your time tonight. I found that really personally very interesting and valuable. Thank you very much, and I hope the guys on the stream did as well. A lot of people have been expressing their support for what we're up to. Can you please like this post if you haven't done so? It's really, really important for us to get this out as far as we can. So if you haven't done the like, please like, and please share. If you can. There are lots of people still thinking that prices are on the fall. I still think you're right there with regard to apartments, Master Singleton. Yeah, apartments is where a lot of the damage is going to be.
And if you can just put a shout out, Martin, to the if they want to follow me on Twitter as well.
Yeah, go on.
Try to put out as much information as I can out there.
So it's at Just Think, right? Just Think Property?
Yeah, at Just Think One.
At Just Think One, yep. So we'll make sure that that's in the comments below as well. Jeff, I really appreciate your contribution there too. I should just explain to Taffy 4, your contribution was greatly received. I couldn't acknowledge it because my app doesn't actually respond to the particular way that you actually put your post in. So with the sort of the Flappy Bird or whatever it is. So apologies for that, but it really is appreciated. So thank you very much for that. I just want to just do a couple of things before we sign off, Edwin, just to explain what's going to happen next week. There will be a show next week. I'm going to be running a show with Michael Invests. Now, I don't know whether you've come across Michael Invests, but there's actually a website and a YouTube channel. Michael runs it. And so Michael will be on next week. We're going to have a bit of a chat about the markets and what's happened over the last year. So that'll be good for him to sort of spread his voice a little bit more widely through the DFA audience. And so that'll be on next week at 8 p.m. Tuesday the 29th. So guys, come on for that after the Christmas festivities and all the hangovers and everything else. Come back for a bit more reality on the 29th. I will be then there the following week, and the following week I will be doing the data to the end of the year, and then talking about the trends that I'm expecting to see in 2021. So the next couple of weeks there will be weekly YouTube live shows, just because I love doing it, and hopefully you'll find time to come too. Edwin, my last question to you is, are we going to do a Monday rant next Monday, or do you want a week off?
Oh, look, I could keep on going, Martin. That's,
okay.
That's all right. I'm up to it. Let's continue to get down and dirty before we get into 2021.
Okay, right. So we will book a rant next Monday. So guys, expect another show from Edwin next Monday. I wasn't sure whether he's going to be up to it, but glad that he is. And really appreciate, Edwin, your time tonight. It's been great to have you on the show, and love your hat. Have a good Christmas, and we will catch up again next week, eh?
Yeah, for sure. And to all our followers and our viewers there, have a Merry Christmas. Stay safe and stay happy.
Excellent. Right, Edwin, I'm going to take you offline now. Thank you very much. I'm just going to sign off, and then we will go there you go. So thank you very much for spending time with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Thanks to Edwin. Always worth listening to what Edwin says, because he's right there in the middle of it and calls it as it is. So worth every minute that we spend with him. Have a great Christmas. I hope that you keep safe. Be careful in the current environment, but also enjoy yourselves as well. And come back next week for the live stream next Tuesday, and for Edwin's rant on Monday. This is Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics signing off. We'll see you next time.